All right. How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Books to Business podcast. Today we are here with Chris Johnson from On Target Living, and super excited to have this conversation to learn about ways to improve your health and your lifestyle. Chris, good to have you, man.
Hey, happy to be here. Absolutely. Looking forward to talking with you guys.
So maybe we can start with a little bit about your journey in how you got to this point. At what point you made the transition and sort of changed your habits and went all in on the healthy approach to living?
Well, I think we all have these journeys. Growing up, I grew up in Michigan. I'm here today, and I had amazing parents growing up. But like many people in my era, I'll be 63 years old in the fall, that were raised by wolves. So I wasn't a healthy eater. I grew up on beefaroni and SpaghettiOs, and I had bad skin. I had a poor immune system for about 15 years of my life. The doctors gave me oral meds and topical creams, but nothing seemed to work. Your son just has sensitive skin. But when I changed what I was eating, I went to Western Michigan as a business economics major, and I had a professor there that kind of turned me on to food and how what we eat really controls so many things in our life, including our health. So when I started eating better, my skin got better. And then I thought, well, I need to take it to another level. So I went to grad school at Michigan State in exercise physiology. And then I, slowly went out in the world, and I worked at a hospital for a few years, a private practice physician for a couple of years. And then I went to work for one of the largest health clubs in the world, the Michigan Athletic Club. And I was the fitness director there for almost 18 years, developing one of the largest personal training programs in the world. And that's when I started speaking and writing, and then corporate America came calling. And then I developed a company called On Target Living in 2006. And then today we're based in Michigan, and we have 3 speakers, both my son and my daughter in the business. And we have a nice team, and we help organizations kind of work on their greatest asset, which is their people's health. So that's kind of the journey. And I've been doing this for a long time, over close to 35 years. So it's not like something I just started yesterday.
Yeah, you look at a company, right? We had a conversation about this earlier about the greatest asset of the company would typically be, they would say, their people, right? If they got their eye on the ball. And then the balance of their life balance. You see a lot of toxicity in people's work life now. And a lot of it's coming out with being home. Life's different now.
Sure.
Some people aren't adjusting as well as others, but it's a big eye opener on how you live each day, because your routines have all been blown up, right? Your daily gym, people that couldn't go to the gym. So how are you seeing people? I mean, maybe we'd speak to that for a few minutes. How are you seeing people adjusting, those that were doing well, to routines and those?
Well, I think one of the things you're asking, the greatest asset of any organization, everybody unanimously says it's our people. And then if I ask the second question, well, what's the greatest asset of your people? I don't really usually get that same, conviction, which is their health. And so when you think of what we're going through right now, our business has just exploded from our virtual trainings due to it's on everybody's mind. We're out of our rhythms. There's a lot of talk about, your immune system and stress and mental health and physical health, and the list goes on. So it's a huge topic right now. And we've been very grateful that our business, again, we can't do any live speaking events, but the virtual, I think we've done over 110 webinars since beginning of April. So it's drastically changed in our space. But what we're realizing that is people, when they don't have their health, they're really starting to, I think there's going to create a lot of awareness coming out of this. So I think many good things can come out of this. And one of them is that awareness on your greatest asset is your health.
So on that very same idea, right? Because I've heard you say, I think the industry has like a 97% failure rate, and it's very difficult to make that change. And something that it's a topic that's, we've talked about a few times and translates to this well. Like you mentioned, extrinsic motivation is a big reason for some of that failure. It's got to be intrinsic. It's got to be, you have to want it, to make it happen. And how would you, help someone come to that conclusion, or what advice would you give for someone that knows they want to change, right, but that they're having trouble making the jump?
Well, I think back in the day when I first got into the personal training arena, we had a very large personal training program. we were all about information. So much information out there today, and it's overwhelming. People are so confused whether it's the paleo or the keto or whatever it might be. Medications, talk to your doctor, blood work. It's just an overarching, overwhelming, array of information. So what you really have to understand is tap into, emotion. And when you can tap into emotion, again, focus creates that. So when people started creating this a little bit more emotion of why they want to do it, and then you teach them basic, simple habits that they can do one step at a time, that's when you start really creating the power. And then what we always talk about is, Viktor Frankl said it's best. It's not always about the ending of the journey. It's the journey itself. And I think when people start enjoying what they're doing, now you got them. Now they get momentum. They like the process. And now they're not doing it because they have to. They're doing it because they want to. And I think that's where people, if you ask anybody, again, I've been doing this my whole life. If you ask anybody, how do they make it? They started with usually some type of emotion that really elevated. And then from there, they started building these little things called habits. And then the next thing you know, they're drinking more water and they're, moving their body 10 minutes a day. And, the list goes on. So it's nothing really earth shattering. It's everybody has them. It's just, how do you break the chain of habits? In fact, we're talking a lot about that right now in our webinars is how do you get out of your funk? I think I've heard, we have 70,000 thoughts a day and we repeat those same 70,000 thoughts every day, which is, again, no wonder we're not changing. So I like what you're saying. Extrinsic motivation is really the magic.
Yeah. The negative.
I'm sorry, intrinsic. Extrinsic, the beginning. Yeah. The intrinsic is the magic.
Yeah, we interviewed Viktor Frankl's grandson a few weeks ago, and he talked about suffering and what Viktor talked about with suffering and that journey, then finding the meaning in the suffering and the captivity. So a lot of people, like you, were struggling with the complexion problems from a bad diet, and you figured out what one thing that worked, changing it, and all of a sudden what the world was telling you to do wasn't what you're supposed to do. You tried something else. You listened to your body and got a breakthrough.
I think that's what's so intriguing about Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, is that it's not about arriving. It's about the journey, the struggle. I remember when I ruptured my patella tendon in 2000 playing basketball. It was the worst injury that you could imagine for your knee. And it really upset my life. I mean, I was out of work for almost 3 months. I was bedridden for 14 days. My life was upside down. But if I look back on that, what's one of the greatest things that ever happened to me? And I realized what people are going through. I learned, I couldn't take a shower for almost 2 weeks. I was constipated. I was very vulnerable. And you learn what people are going through and the struggles. So I think we can really take a lot out of what we're going through today and the struggles we're going through. But I think for most people, when you ever ask them, they would replace that or, the struggle they've ever gone through. That's the power. That's kind of what's really something that changed their life.
I think people are also, as they're suffering in some way, they don't have, like you said, the diet industry's created a 97% failure rate. Because every single diet is fueled by someone changing from their old diet to their new diet and paying for their system. But what I like that you laid out was the simplicity of the pyramid, the health and performance pyramid, and the target, the food target. Because we were going through your food target, the keep away, and the red, and then the green. It's like we think we eat pretty well too, and there's a lot of foods that kind of wandered into our lives. I think that might be through misinformation.
Well, I think Eddie was beating himself up a little bit about that, but there's no need to beat yourself up. The reason I designed the food target years ago is that in this large health club, we had about 10,000 members. And as you just mentioned, the diet industry, there's something new comes on the market. I think there's 46,000 diet books on the market today with a high failure rate. But, everybody's on a diet. And so I knew I've competed in bodybuilding since 1985. And I knew the way to lose weight was not based on calories or some type of decreasing some form of a macronutrient like a carb or protein or fat. It's really about improving the quality and the patterns of how you eat. Mm-hmm. And that's really why I designed the food target. It's based on making incremental steps towards the center of the target that any second or third grader can understand. So that's really where we get so sideways on eating this or that. It really gets back to eating a healthy balance of good carbs, proteins, and fats, and improving the quality. And if you do that, then the body starts to heal itself from the inside out, and then everything else goes with that, including your health, starts to soar.
See, that's what I found so amazing, right? Is that, I mean, you've alluded to this, and actually, Terry, you've mentioned this in the past before too. It's like a lot of the things, like for me, headaches, for example, there are things that you treat the symptom and you don't realize, at least for me, right? It's like, no, if you change your diet and you change some of the things that you think would have no correlation to some of the physiological issues you have, you do see those problems kind of resolve themselves. Like I've seen it in certain ways with running, and like I said, the headaches being one thing because I've had to continually test what I eat. But it's an amazing point, and it will help people realize how important eating is, because a lot of their issues can be resolved.
Yeah, and I think food is many things, as we all know. It's loved, it's social. I mean, we've noticed that obviously since we've been going through this pandemic. Mm-hmm. It's so social, but food is medicine. You know, food is information. And so if somebody is having headaches, they're probably deficient in the mineral magnesium. And so you say, okay, you know, what foods are high in magnesium? Or maybe taking an Epsom salt bath. Or let's just say I'm having problems with, staying asleep. You know, again, it could be back to magnesium. If I'm having problems with my immune system, maybe you're deficient in vitamin C, like eating an orange, or selenium and zinc, like Brazil nuts or pumpkin seeds. So we have to understand the power of food and how food is medicine, but we're not taught this stuff. You know, we're taught food is food. Well, food's not food. Food's information. And while we feed the information, whether it's cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, or, you know, whatever it might be, then you see these major transformations. And that's what I've witnessed in my career, is just incredible transformations with people when they started understanding the power of what they eat and how it affects pretty much every aspect of their health.
You had talked about some oils I saw a couple of your speeches too online. The omega, is it the omega oil that is deficient? What's the one thing? I mean, here's my question. What's the one like massively deficient part of the typical American's daily diet?
Yeah, Terry, that's a great question. So when we used to do our webinars, you know, we talk about nutrition 101, and really it gets down to what are people lacking? Mm-hmm. You know, what are they missing? And the second question usually is, what are they not absorbing? So just because I'm taking a supplement does not mean I'm absorbing that supplement. Mm-hmm. And so when you first go to lacking, and again, back to the food target, if you can get people to eat more foods in balance, they're lacking very little. You know, when people start cutting out breakfast and they never eat an ancient grain like an oatmeal again, they're probably deficient in B vitamins. If they're cutting out, you know, fruits, it's almost impossible to have a healthy immune system. And so when you think about what most people are missing omega-3 fats. I think the statistic last that we saw is 97% of the American population is deficient in omega-3 fats. So what does that do? Well, that's brain health, that's heart health. That's a natural anti-inflammatory. It's great for your hormones. So when we start talking about it, you get people excited, like, hey, you know, cod liver oil. Cod liver oil is high in vitamin D3 naturally. It's high in vitamin A and E, but it's also high in this thing called DHA, which is this powerful omega-3 fat. So again, you know, when we bring it to our events and we show it to people, you know, they're all like, I'm not taking that because they're afraid of the taste. But then we talk about the benefits of it, and then they get to try it at the end of the event, and they're all saying the same thing. Well, that doesn't taste like anything. It tastes like a little lemon drop. And now you got them. So now they've experienced the taste, but now here comes the results. And so that's what most people are missing. Most people are also missing some form of chlorophyll, which is green. So when we get people to drink more water, consume an omega-3 fat like cod liver oil, flax, or chia, and then consume some form of chlorophyll, which is greens like kale, spinach, broccoli. And what we really promote is like spirulina, chlorella, which is a freshwater algae or wheatgrass. Now they're picking up speed very quickly. And so we learned over the years that how do we help people kind of speed up this process? And one of the things we really promote is this thing called the source. Where does it come from? So the closer it gets to the source, you can't really go wrong. So now we're making it simple for people. They're like, okay, I don't have to take a vitamin C? No. Eat an orange or put a lemon in your water. What about selenium and zinc? Do I need to take that for my immune system? No, just eat a Brazil nut or pumpkin seed. So you can see how this starts to go. Mm-hmm. And now you're getting people to not be lacking nutrients. They're just now covering a lot more ground and having greater balance. And now their body's healthier.
You talk about absorbing, like I take vitamins. My doctor has directed me to take some vitamins. We're such a culture of taking a pill to make something go away. It sounds like that's maybe not necessarily the best way to do it.
Well, again, when we answer questions, at our events or during our webinars, we really come back to the source. So it's not always what we're eating, it's what we're absorbing. And so people can take a multivitamin, they can take a probiotic, they can take a baby aspirin, but it's not the source. So if you can get people to understand the source, then the need for a lot of these supplements starts to disappear. And they're like, oh, really? I don't have to take that vitamin D3? No, the highest source of vitamin D3 in the world is sunlight and cod liver oil, if it's the processed correctly cod liver oil. So that's now you're getting people to understand that, hey, I don't have to take this chemistry set. And remember, food is not ideally supposed to be consumed in isolation. Hippocrates said this back in 465 BC, that the body is, not in isolation, the body is one. And the same thing goes with food. We try to, if you can get people to consume nutrients not in isolation, that's the power. So I don't really recommend for any of our clients to take calcium supplements or vitamin D3 or vitamin C when they can just eat a food that their body's going to use and absorb. And generally the price is a lot lower.
But see, even that I think is huge for a lot of people, because there's a big misconception. So the focus on making sure you're absorbing and really focusing on the things that you're not taking in. I know it seems simple, but like my thought process is always like, oh man, I shouldn't be eating this. And it's always like, what shouldn't I be taking in versus holistically, dude, what are you lacking? And I think that on the surface, that helps people kind of rethink about, their diet.
Well, Eddie, I loved what you just said, because that is just gold, what you just said. So remember that question. So here's where we go after it. Let's quit playing defense. Let's quit focusing on what I shouldn't be eating. Let's focusing on what we should be eating. It's the same thing when you think of medicine. We're doing social distancing and keeping our hands clean. That's fantastic, but that's defensive medicine. Offensive medicine would be really focusing on, how do I rejuvenate my immune system? And the same thing goes what you're talking about with eating foods, good or bad or indifferent. Really, I try to get people, I don't care what you're doing. Let's start adding some of these healthy things to your world. And what happens slowly over time, back to the intrinsic, extrinsic motivation, you start slowly pushing things out of your diet because you like how you're feeling. So I'm not telling you need to quit drinking alcohol or soda pop or eating a bunch of junk food. I'm just going to add a couple things to you. And then the next thing you know, you're like, I actually feel better. Maybe I don't want to do this. And now they're moving in a direction where it's their process, not yours. And that's really where the power, now they got the power. So I love what you just asked. That teed it up very easy for me.
Adding. It's interesting.
Adding.
That's not like
subtracting.
A takeaway.
Adding. Yeah. People love, if I always say this, if I walk to any live event or even virtual events and I said, okay, today, everybody, no alcohol, no caffeine, no chocolate, they'd be run for the hills. Right. I don't even go down that path. I don't even have to say it.
Right.
What I want to say is, like, let's play offense. Let's add a few things to your world. Simple as, are you drinking water? Are you adding a lemon to your water? What's that do? Well, it makes your body more alkaline, helps your digestion. It's a natural, probiotic. So that's the simple method I've learned over the years, is how do you make it easy for people to transition and develop these habits that they love? Because when you start taking things out of people's world, now they feel deprived.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work.
The three of us have talked a lot about that, like sitting down for lunch and stuff, how, these things tie together, and how, like, me as a runner, it's like I go through these peaks and valleys, like in all transparency, where it's like you're working out, you're feeling good to your point, and you want to eat better. And then I'd have an issue where usually it's my hamstring. It put me out for a month, month and a half. And then it's like, well, why eat well? And you start rationalizing, and it's like, I really think that's a powerful thing where you have equilibrium. And when you're feeling good in those three pillars, it carries over. So that really.
Well, and I think everybody goes up and down. There's no such thing. If you played any sport or life in general, we all have ups and downs. The key is, how do you develop some habits you don't give up? So even though you hurt your hamstring, you're still taking your cod liver oil in the morning. You're still drinking water. You're still stretching. You're still trying to get good to sleep. You're still doing basic things to keep the human body healthy and help you recover. And then you can get a little bit more specific, playing to get a little more offense. Maybe in the future, you're going to do a little bit more work on your suppleness. As a runner, are you as supple as you want to be? Well, for me personally, that's an area that I spend a lot of time that I never used to, is I work on my suppleness. So because I don't want to hurt my hamstring or tear my calf muscle or whatever it might be. So I think that's the thing. And it's an awareness. So if you said, okay, Eddie, I'm hurting my hamstring, then maybe as you age, because again, as we all age, you're just starting to pay a little more attention on your workout, that maybe just running is not the only thing you're doing. You're working on some things that create a little bit more balance specifically to what you want to accomplish. So that's where I think people, and we all get sideways, we all go up and down, but really I don't mind if people get out of their seat. I just don't want to get them off the bus.
Right. We talk about the bus a lot. Yeah. And the bus, right, to Jim Collins' book, which is here, Good to Great, talks about the bus and the people that you're around and the associations you have. I'm sure have a big influence on your behaviors. I'm glad you touched on alcohol, because that's a big, it's obviously unhealthy. But when you tell someone that's drinking too much to not drink, that you'll make an enemy rather quickly. You tell them to, add water. That's interesting. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody wants to be told what they shouldn't be doing. Right. I really don't. And so, that's the thing I look at sometimes, whether it's your kids or family members or friends, is, nobody wants to hear somebody preach to you. What I notice, and we all notice this, is people are watching. So if you're just doing it and then they ask a question, like Eddie just asked a great question earlier, then you say, okay, if they're not curious at all, then that's okay. You love them and, all the stuff that goes with it. But really create that awareness. Well, tell me, Eddie, what's your running look like? When you hurt your hamstring, how did you hurt it? That now we're getting in the direction that I think people want. And but preaching and telling people what they can't do, I've learned over 20,000 hours of personal training, doesn't work. Thousands of hours on a stage speaking. Really what works is when the light bulb goes off for them and say, okay, maybe, just maybe, I need to do a few things differently because I want to move in this direction. In the future, I always tell people, how do you create a better future? And now they're saying, never thought about creating a better future.
Right.
Whether it's financially, physically, emotionally, whatever, we all have our struggles.
Yeah,
But when you start to get people to create a better future, they kind of get excited about that. And that's what I loved about Jim Collins' is Good to Great. I use the 3 circles all the time. I use so many different teachings in that book.
Yeah. You have I love how you tied in Maslow's hierarchy of need to someone's journey with health, that self-actualization. But you also address some non-eating, non-nutrition habits and activities that are helpful in your book. In your one thing in particular, Steve and I were talking about was the white space, I think you called it.
Yeah, one of the things we've learned a long time ago is, a lot of people are very interested in the nutrition piece, but fundamentally it's how you rest, how you eat, and how you move. And that's really our mantra at On Tour Living, is the foundational pillars. Because if you're not sleeping, we talk a lot about breathing. Breathing matters. How you breathe matters. Are you breathing through your nose? Are you using your diaphragm? Do you have rhythmic breathing? I mean, the list goes on, because when we get stressed, the first thing that changes is how we breathe. And then we talk about sleep. Sleep's never been a higher, problem in the United States today. It's the fastest growing group of medications. So as a society, we're not sleeping well. And then the last piece is space. And I think during this pandemic, I think we all have a little bit more white space if we choose to have it. And I think for me, this is going to be some good stuff coming out of this, because when people don't have space, they're not going to be healthy. They're not going to be happy. And I think we all love creating that space. So a big pillar of what we teach is resting, because if you're not resting, you're not going to have, we talk a lot about rest and digest. You cannot have if you have an imbalanced nervous system, you cannot have a strong immune system. And people don't really understand that. I'm like, well, if you're stressed, you don't digest. So that's why when people have, we're talking about stress today and strategies to help calm the mind or, the body itself, that's a big pillar. And the other pillar is, movement. How do you get people to change their mindset about movement? Because about 20% of our population moves their body regularly. The other 80% does not. And we know it's so magical, but we just don't do it.
What role does napping have in the resting?
Well, I think napping is a fantastic way to recover.
Yeah.
And so when we think about, we teach micro breaks, medium breaks, and macro breaks. And during the day, when you find, especially going on right now, I think everybody's Zoom fatigued and the list goes on, but we're not getting enough breaks.
Right.
If you're not getting enough breaks, it doesn't allow the body to recover. We always talk about testosterone as the number one predictor of how you're aging. So for your listeners out there, next time they go get a blood test, you need to know your testosterone level. It doesn't matter what age you are. But what we find all the time is low, especially in some of the services industries we work with, the testosterone levels are so low, and it's directly because they don't get enough rest. So they're all interested in CrossFit and, really working hard and eating right and doing all that stuff. But reality is, when I look at their blood tests, I'm like, wait a minute. You don't have any space in your life. You're not sleeping very good, are you? Then they're like, no. I said, do you ever take a nap? I can't even imagine taking a nap. That's like weakness.
I can't imagine. Wait.
But reality is, I think, imagine if you took a 5-minute, close your eyes, worked on your breathing, or a 10-minute nap or whatever. So I think all that stuff we can learn from so many other countries around the world and taking these breaks. I remember going to Italy years ago, and it's the middle of the day, and I'm like, where is everybody?
Yeah.
All the shops are closed, and like, well, they're off between 1 and 5. What do you mean they're off between 1 and 5? What are they doing? Well, they're eating and they're taking a nap. I thought to myself, I need to come back and live in Italy. So
doesn't sound
anyway,
bad,
we need to have more of those breaks and not feel like it's a badge of honor not to have this recovery, because recovery really helps you perform at a high level.
Just the fact that you can tell that or paint that picture from a blood test is pretty incredible. It's like, wow.
Yeah, because the Romans, as I studied naps, we're the only mammals that don't nap. I nap every day. And the Romans, it was kind of a Roman thing. I think they called it the word siesta comes from, I think, 6th or 16th hour, which is they just shut down and sleep to let the body recover. And that's long gone. Like the idea of having a nap.
Yeah, Terry, one of the things we did years ago, our trainers were getting really burned out at our large health club. And so I just okay, how would we help them? And they had no space to go to recover. No matter where they were, people were pulling at them. Mm-hmm. So underneath the stairwell, we created 6 nap spaces. Yeah. And you would sign up every half hour. And you could exit and enter in 2 different directions. And there really was just basically some very, very, dim light, but there was, mats and blankets and pillows, and every one of our trainers said it was the best thing that we ever could have done to help these people recover during their day. Mm-hmm. This is what you're going to see more in corporate America. You're going to see these places to go and recover where you have just complete shutdown of noise and a way to get away. And because we know our world is speeding up and people are getting crushed. Mm. And if you want to have a better workforce, can you imagine if they said, everybody today, you have to take a half-hour nap?
Right. Like
everybody. And again, some of the type A personalities we've worked with at training at our headquarters, it's they're almost like their skin's crawling when we have them work on their breathing and close their eyes, and they can't do it.
Right.
Well, then it tells them the nervous system's completely out of whack.
Yeah, I remember that was when I was in the corporate environment, that was really frowned upon. Like from the people entry level all the way to the and it's not that they said don't do it, but you're right. It was like a badge of honor. Like, yeah, I sleep 4 hours a night, or like, I pulled an all-nighter working on this, and it's like, wow. I'm not sure what's wrong
I was working with a very high-level administrator in this large hospital, and he truthfully looked me in the eye and said, "Yeah, I sleep, 5 hours a night, and I work 70 hours." And I'm like, "You like that?" Well, it's kind of necessary. I'm like, already in his mind, that was his reality. That's what he truly believed. In reality, LeBron James said it best: the greatest performance enhancement drug on the planet is 8 hours of sleep. Ooh. So if LeBron James is paying his trainer $1.5 million to help him understand why sleep's so important, I think that hospital executive is missing the mark.
Right. Yeah, the meditative component. I got connected with yoga up in Jacksonville, which is a very meditative world for yoga. And I got down here to Miami, and I started going to hot yoga, which is really, Eddie and I went for a little while.
Body circuits.
Yeah, it was good, but I missed out on that stillness of the meditative. The end of yoga when you have that settled down part to think and reflect. So I'm going to try to reconnect with.
What I think that is, my daughter is our yoga guru, and I think that's when you really get into, yoga is really. Everybody does in the United States. We do yoga movements.
Yeah.
But the big missing link when I really started taking yoga a while back is I always missed the breathing component. Mm-hmm. And then as I learned more and more about the breathing, we had a great mentor along the way, Dr. Phil Nuremberg out of Scranton, Pennsylvania, and really talked the power of breath and how it, it's calming the mind and the body and everything else goes with the movement. So I think, doing some of these things out there, when you engage the breath, like I really challenge some of my clients, like when you're working out, I want you to breathe only through your nose. And when they start breathing only through their nose when they're working out, they're going to realize the intensity of their workout. And then again, they're going to have to be at a certain level. They're going to have to breathe through the mouth, their ears, and their nose, everything they can. But just that little awareness during movements of your breath is so powerful. But most people are not even aware. The average person in the United States breathes 18 breaths per minute. In reality, everybody should be breathing simply 10 breaths or less per minute. And if you can change that simple thought, everybody that comes in and trains with us, the first thing we do is we measure their breath, and they're like, and then you teach them how to breathe, and they're like, wow, it's incredible how this helps me recover during my day and helps my mind. And oh, by the way, I'm, having less stress hormones racing through my body and all the stuff that goes with that.
Wow. I never heard that statistic.
I would either. That's interesting.
18 breaths. Isn't that crazy?
Double. Yeah.
Fast paced.
Because your breath and your breathing go hand in hand. So I was doing a colonoscopy without getting the details to you, but I did this about 6 months ago, and I went in there and I was working on my breath because they got the blood pressure cuff hooked up to you, and they got the, your resting heart rate and everything else. And so the nurse comes in, and my wife's sitting there with me, and the nurse says, "Hey, do you know your resting heart rate's at 40? I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Because I came in, my resting heart rate's pretty low. It's around 46 to 47.
Right.
And she said, "But I was working on my breath. And as my breath, slowed down, so did my heart rate." And we had this amazing dialogue just before I was getting my colonoscopy. She says, "So now I'm not stressed about my colonoscopy. But that's how powerful breath is. And if you can get people to learn these basic things, next thing you know, they have better, we talk about lung capacity and how to quiet the mind and improve digestion and all the stuff that goes with it."
So let's say taking, all these basics, right? The 3 pillars: resting, eating, movement. Other than reading this book, which I'd strongly recommend, right, for our folks and our listeners that are trying to, become more health conscious, what's one thing or maybe the biggest piece of advice you could give to say, all right, guys, let's start today. This will get the train moving.
Well, again, I think, Eddie, you're asking the magic question because that's what everybody wants to know after a webinar or seminar is like, tell me the one thing.
Right.
Well, under the resting, eating, and moving pillar, just take one thing under each one. So maybe you want to start being more aware of how you breathe. Mm-hmm. That's it. And you practice that because it's a practice. Everybody wants that pill. None of this comes in a pill, never will. And then maybe you start with, are you truly drinking enough water? And then the last but not least, what we always talk about is, are you moving your body for 10 minutes every day? And if you can start building on those pillars, then you go back and say, okay, now I'm working on my breath. Now, how can I ramp up the breath? Like Terry's talking about now in yoga, now I want to learn even a little bit more about breathing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to learn a little bit about, using the nostrils. The nostrils are a switchboard for the nervous system. Well, you don't want to get people confused about that. Just pay attention to your breathing. But as time goes on, they're going to get better about this. And then they're going to start using their diaphragm. And then under the water, maybe they start adding a lemon to their water. And under the movement, maybe they're going to do a couple stretches. So you can see that how this starts to grow and build. And so that's really what my is basically perfecting the ordinary. If you can get people to do the basic things and they do them every single day, that's the power of healing the human body. If you can get our entire nation, it's incredible to me. And again, without getting too political here, it's incredible to me now why some of the top leaders in this pandemic are not talking about the immune system.
Right.
Every night they should be saying, hey, listen, everybody, to boost your immune system, you need to work on your breathing, make sure you're getting enough water, and moving your body. How long did that take? 5 seconds?
3 seconds, yeah.
So the next night you say, okay, now everybody, I want you to eat an orange. I want you to do, you can see how simple this is because people are like, oh, I'm going to do, no, don't make this harder than it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's what we're looking at is like, oh, I need to quit eating. Then, let's just start with this. And you build and build and build and build. And now you have a routine and a process that you can repeat over and over and over. Because we all are a bundle of habits. Right. Everybody has their habits. First thing I sit down with people or doing events is like, tell me your habits. And you really, sometimes your head just spins like, that's really your habit of drinking 2 pots of coffee a day? Yeah, that's my habit. Your habit really is you only sleep 4 hours a night? Yeah, that's my habit. You can see like, well, it's no wonder you have all these problems, but you don't have to go down that path and tell them what a train wreck they are. But the point of it is this is what's going on out there, and we're making it a lot harder than it needs to be.
It's a compounding effect. That's a book we did a couple weeks ago. Last week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit each day. So many
compound interest. That's the magic.
Recurring ideas that keep coming up in health, wealth, happiness, everything, business. It's always like doing the little things a lot and learning. And information, I think, is a big idea. Is taking away misinformation versus information. That's, I think, where the food target thing will come in really well, really handy.
And I think one other thing too is you have to get people to change how they think. Mm-hmm. And so everybody has beliefs, and Brian Moran talks a lot about beliefs. But what are the beliefs that you really? What are the possibilities of creating this future you want? And we get in the way, like the 4-minute mile. Nobody thought you could run the 4-minute mile. So it's the same principles. Like, I want to get off my cholesterol medication or my blood pressure medication or type 2 diabetes. And I'll say to them, do you believe you can do it? And they're like, I don't think that's possible. I'm like, well, let me just tell you, this case study, this case study, this case study, all of them have got off these medications. Mm-hmm. Really? That's possible? Yeah. So that's how we begin. We change the mindset that, this is possible. I have a woman that was 365 pounds. She started her journey at age 65. She lost almost 200 pounds, went from 16 meds to 3 meds, beginning at age 65. So when you start planting those seeds, like, she actually did that? I'm like, yeah, she actually did that. Who takes that step at age 65? Yeah. But when you plant that seed of possibility, now you get people to start thinking differently. And I think that's what gets exciting for people.
Yeah, you see others do it. That's a great message for that audience. That's an audience that needs that message. Tell me, change gears a little bit. What's it like working with your family? You work with your kids every day? Seems like you got a
I never envisioned working with my kids, but it just kind of slowly morphed. I remember my daughter thought I was a freak show when she was in middle school, and now she's our registered dietitian yoga guru. So it is interesting. My son runs our company. They're twins. They're 34. They're fantastic, and really they help me, stay fresh and engaged. And we have challenges here and there. Every business does, including the family. But I think we do a pretty good job of keeping, my wife sometimes, she's part of the business too. It's like, do we need to really talk business today? So my son really does a great job of kind of having the line. When we walk out the door, we're done talking about business.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a little harder because that's kind of our MO. But no, it's great. I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah. I saw that when we were watching your stuff. I said, "Wow, it's great to see your kids every day, like at some level."
Yeah, it's great. Hey, I wouldn't change it for nothing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, anything you wanna plug? Anything you're excited about that you want to let people know coming up? Or
well, I think for those your listeners, check out our website. We have lots of vibrant, engaging information at our On Target Living website. We have 2 podcasts that come out each month. We have a nice team. We're very willing to share information and help people. So again, we're very accessible. Mm-hmm. But we're on a mission, and we're on a mission to help people get better. And we're hurting right now, and we need to be better. We need to change our whole mindset about healthcare because it's not working. And we have I always tell. We talk a lot about you have the power, and that's really what people don't really understand is they do have the power to create a new future. And I've seen it every day of what we've done for the last 30 plus years, that people do have the power, and they just have to take back their power.
That's
absolutely.
awesome. I definitely feel more empowered than I did an hour ago. So thank you for that. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, don't beat yourself up. Don't worry about it. It's okay to venture into the Ready or the Food Target here and there.
The pot of coffee comment was the last straw. I'm like,
don't do it. I don't even want to know.
Oh man!
But that's On Target
All baby
Living.
steps. Remember, it's take small steps. That's key.
That's it.
Yeah, let's add things. Let's add before we go after the coffee. Let's add some lemon in the water because I'm already drinking plenty.
That's
of water.
correct.
Lemon in the water.
That's
I don't
right.
do that. That's what I'm going to add. Lemon in the water and breathing. And then I'm going to try that cod liver oil. Those are the 3
Try
things.
the cod liver oil. Those are 3 great steps, Terry. Those are fantastic. So
cool.
That's it.
It's ontargetliving.com, correct? The website?
Correct.
All right, Chris Johnson. So if you're a business or you're an individual, you want to take it to another level with your health, I could talk to you for hours. There's so many more questions I have about the micro steps later on. That's where true mastery occurs. But getting started is what's important. So thanks, Chris, for joining us, and everything will be in the meeting or the notes of the show.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for spending time, guys. Appreciate it.
You bet.